my goodness. Yes, whenever Pete says things like that, I'm like, I can't cry right before I get on stage. Thank you for being here. I know it's 4-ish, so I appreciate you. I'm super grateful always to have an opportunity. And this is awesome. I wonder if I could put stuff on here. Don't yell at me. So right now, I'm actually wearing, anyone heard of the Ray-Ban, the new devices? They're called Wayfarers. Yeah. Anyway, so I am recording you all right now. So later you can go onto my Instagram and you can see this exact video from me walking on stage. But it's just kind of cool because it allows the world to see what it's like to be me through my eyes. And that's what I'm hoping to do really for you guys today. Is share a little bit about my life, about what and how I got here. And it is a crazy journey. I won't get to tell you all my fun stories, but I will tell you some of the good ones. So this is why I do what I do. In every Voice Summit that I've had the pleasure of being able to be on stage, I share my family. It's why I do what I do. They literally yesterday was like, how long will you be gone? But this is them, and I got into technology actually at a very young age. My dad was a golden age of science fiction lover and really raised me well on Bradbury and Asimov. I mean, I think I was 6. And those stories don't end well for a 6-year-old. It was a little traumatizing, but it was good stuff. I mean, I ended up really thinking of the world, like it didn't seem foreign to me that you would talk to a computer at a young age, right? Like it was the books I was reading, it was the friends that I made, and I was a nerd, so I didn't have a whole lot of real people friends. So my books really were very good companions. Maybe some of you can relate. But in 2013, well, really, my son, Max, he was born with Down syndrome about 16 years ago. And when he was born, a geneticist came up to me and he said, old person, like, I won't say the age in case someone's offended by it, but to me, an aged person. And they said to me, oh, I'm really sorry to hear this, and that the diagnosis is this. You probably need to put him up for adoption or put him in an institution. The world is just not, it's not built for people like him. He won't be able to do anything. And I, of course, as a technologist, which I have been my entire life, I took a different path, obviously. And I started looking. If you go and you become my friend on LinkedIn, which I encourage you to do, if you become my friend on LinkedIn, you will find that my journey, my career has been to travel to the best and brightest companies at the right and perfect time to see accessibility become a reality. And it became my mission. And so I created a world where everything I worked on in my day fueled. People are like, how could you have 4 kids and a technology career? Oh, because I was serving them. I was making sure my family's life got better in every project I was on. So I was a cloud architect when I joined AWS back in 2013. And a little known project known as Alexa was born. And at that time, I don't know if any of you remember these days, but the Fire Phone it had just died. Most people were afraid of anything new we were doing at Amazon because they didn't want to be part of the next failed project. And I remember getting an email that they sent to everyone in the company saying, anyone want to be on this team? And I got that email as a training manager at AWS, having no college education. I did not graduate from college, having no specific skill set in AI at all, awesome, other than my love of science fiction. I took that email and I said, I'm totally doing that. I'm doing it. And I went to my manager and I was like, I'm doing this. I would like to move. And he said, oh, he tapped me on the head. No, you can't do that. You're not technical enough for that. Like, that's natural language. You're a training manager. Needless to say, luckily at Amazon, they like the brave and the bold, and I went and I did it anyway, and it changed the trajectory of my life. Speaking of trajectory, I went on to do things that I never, ever thought I would ever do. I ended up getting awards around my work, but here, every single one of these awards I got because I learned by doing. Instead of just reading, in addition to reading, I actually built things. In 2014, I built over 100 skills for Amazon Alexa. At that time, I was building all skills around kindness and mindfulness. Today, you'd be like, well, yeah, that's a pretty big category. That category did not exist when I started writing those skills. As a matter of fact, everyone on my team was like, it's a kitchen device. What are you doing? Like, who does that? And I found it, at that time, I was new. I was literally felt like I'm the imposter, right? I have no classical training in this skill set. But I decided to build them anyway. They ended up hitting the top 20, sat there for years. I have over 1 million unique users of these skills today, and it created an entire category of mindfulness and kindness skills. I even have people who took my exact same code, because everything I do is open source. They took my exact same code and published it as their own skill, and did better than me on the rank. I don't know how they did that. But hopefully, they used it as a baseline to improve on the experience, because I will tell you, I never went back and edited those things once they launched. But it was really interesting to me to find out that and I've done this multiple times in my career, but specifically in Alexa, that I could learn it, I could do it, and then I could talk about it. And that cycle created a huge opportunity in this space, and it exists today. I will encourage many of you to do the same once we're done here. But I've had a good run. I do remember, however, in 2014, this moment, and I want to share with you, I've never shared this video, or this picture publicly before, but my dad was in a horrific car accident. He was walking across the street in Seattle. I brought him there. He was walking across the street, got hit by a car. Somebody was on their phone, wasn't paying attention. He was a pedestrian, broke a bunch of stuff, spine, big old mess. And that was in 2013, 6 months in the ICU. Finally, he comes home for Christmas. And I give him a device that actually had been in his room the entire time. But I want to show it to you. I'll try not to cry. Can you see his face? Right? I gave him this device, and he was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been reading about for 40 years. Right? Like and to this day, we have over 133 devices that are voice-enabled in our home, including our microwave and every TV, and light sockets, you name it. And his life, granted, he had a traumatic brain injury. You can see, well, barely, but he has 2 holes in his head where they had to get rid of a subdermal hematoma thing. It was bad. He today couldn't use a phone or a computer at all. But because of the technology we are working on and the technology we are adding into experiences, he has a life. He does live with me. I don't know if he has to, but he does live with me. But he is independent. He gets pill reminders. We used to have a cool pill robot that would trigger pills out to him, right? His life completely changed in this year. And it wasn't, I don't know if you remember 2014 for Alexa, it wasn't an awesome year particularly, right? It was more broken than it was fixed. But our kind of charter, the mantle that we have as people in this room is to improve on these experiences, because the tech is there. I went on from Alexa, I was there 4 years, launched 4 language models successfully, super excited about my journey there. I went to Microsoft. And at Microsoft, I uncovered that it's not just voice. Though when I was at Amazon, I remember Jeff Bezos very specifically saying, Alexa everywhere, voice everywhere. Voice is the only thing. That's it. It's the future. That's all you talk about. And when I got to Microsoft, I realized that, yes, voice, super important. My dad can't live without it. But it became a multimodal experience. Voice is one AI model. What happens when I add voice and gesture? What happens when I add voice and gesture and sentiment analysis? What happens when I start combining models today that we, as non-data scientists, we can actually implement, right? We can, as a developer, you could take 100 days of coding on Twitter and learn enough to leverage today's AI models and build incredible solutions. Oh, my dad's calling me right now, telling me, yes, he's telling me not to forget my selfie. I won't. So I always take a selfie at the end of the call, and okay, maybe I'll take it right now just in case I get nervous and forget. So let's do this really quick. Are you ready? All right, ready, fam? He seriously doesn't realize that I'm like live on stage. All right, you ready? Say cheese. Awesome, thank you. Oh, you guys are great. Fantastic, awesome. Okay, so we're just gonna load up these letters, numbers, and okay, there we go. But really exciting, and I'm so glad, because I have walked off many a stage and been like, I missed my selfie. And you all are my new friends. Now, a couple other things happened. Oh, there we go. During this journey on Alexa. And it's one very important point I want to make sure you all understand. And here's the good/bad news. People who tell you you can't, they know no color or gender, right? They know no demographic. Like, there are always going to be people who tell you no. Oftentimes, though, the people who say no are usually the people later who ask you for a job, just so you know, right? They are usually the people that can't see the future. That's the gift we give them. We are in a room, and this has always been the room. The people I have met, and some of you guys are still here, you all are still here, but the people I've met in this room over the last, 7 years, those of us who survived and are still here in this industry, we're the ones who are inspiring others to get into this space, who are giving the gift of our own journey, right, to people to say, hey, yeah, they said no. They said those skills won't work. They said you could try. Good luck. They talked about me behind my back. Oh my gosh. In 2015, one of my very popular skills failed. And if any of you worked at Amazon or know the myth, Jeff Bezos got an email from his brother saying, the mindfulness skill isn't working. And I was the only mindfulness skill on the platform. As a matter of fact, today, if you go to Alexa, open mindfulness, one word invocation, you could go and try it out today. But anyway, it wasn't working. So a war room was created. 12 of my colleagues got into this war room and started chatting. It was electronic, so I could read all of the glory. And in this chat, they were like, it's gotta be her code. Her code has to be broken. It's definitely her code. My code had been running for 2 years, had never had a problem. But anyway, sure, okay, it's gotta be her code. The things that they said really bothered me, made me a little bit sad, actually. I won't repeat exactly, but it was disheartening. Only to find out that the first time ever, Elasticsearch had gone down. An actual Amazon service had crashed. But it taught me a lot because many times that's the voice in our head, right? The voice in our head that's like, oh my gosh, of course it's your fault that broke, or this, like it's inherently us, when actually it had nothing to do with me. And luckily though, I stayed the course. I kept building. I literally built another skill the next day. All of the code that I wrote, I tested for massive scale, even though I never thought one person would use it. It turned out people did use it. Not right away. A skill I built in 2015 ended up during the pandemic going viral. I got 20,000 users a month, where prior to that, it had barely got, I think it had 1 review and had like 16 users. It was about unicorns. It just tells you, like people during the, man, we needed help. But people were looking for unicorn help. But I was glad I made that skill, right? But again, people told me it wouldn't work out. So a lot of the ideas you have today, if you say them out loud, someone might say, psh, no. And the reality is that the person, like 2 months from now, 2 years from now, a pandemic from now, actually is gonna need that. It's gonna need that feature, that function, that skill. And so I encourage you to find someone like me who's been through it to cheer you on. So we do have more power than ever. And so as I kind of dive into some of the other stories and more specifically features that I want to talk to you about related to voice today and tomorrow, I always like to remind us, like, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. APIs are at your fingertips to do things we couldn't do 5 years ago. Everything from computer vision to object detection, contract analysis, right? Let alone the ability to add voice to any one of those solutions. But as some of you, hopefully, I'm gonna prepare you, there's audience participation coming. Are you ready? Okay. So and I've asked this before, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. There's a quote out there that says, with great power comes great responsibility. And that's us. Never have I felt more responsible than when I got an email from a 25-year-old girl woman, I guess now, but when I talked to her, she was 17. It was one of my first talks as an Alexa evangelist, and she heard me talk to girls who code in a high school. She, out of the blue, sent me a message, and I try not to get emotional. I probably will anyway, but she sent me a message on LinkedIn, and she's like, I don't know if you remember me, but you talked to my high school class. And now I'm a, TPM in voice at Microsoft, and I just wanted to say thank you. And I didn't do anything. All I did was talk and say, this is cool, you should try it. I ran a hackathon. And it changed the trajectory of her life, similar to how events like this have changed the trajectory of mine. But we have a responsibility. We can't just be here, right? In a space like this, in an industry like this, it requires us to ask better questions. Then there are a few questions I get asked every time I talk about Alexa and get off this stage, every keynote I do. One of them I talked to Mike about earlier was privacy, and you probably can guess, right? One of them was privacy. The other one was, how could you let a company like Amazon name a device after a kid or a child's name or a girl's name, right? There's a whole community of these people, if you don't know, and they're hurt and upset. How could you support men and humanity using this device to speak to a female voice persona like a servant? How could you do that? I am just the messenger, as you all know. But these things changed the way I thought, and I uncovered a concept known as design justice. Anyone familiar with design justice? Interesting stuff, right? Had I known when I was a wee lad in Alexa development that I could ask questions like, who will this hurt? Who will this maybe make their lives harder? Or even who will it help? Do you know that our #1 use case for Alexa was the 1% of the 1% who could afford a relatively expensive device to stick in their kitchen? That was who we were building for. And it turns out, though, that's not it ended up not being who I ended up serving the most. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I do, though, love the concept of innovation. And voice brought me into many unique situations. So I want to quickly talk about this because there are some of you who may be looking how do we get voice either aware in our company, or how do we start thinking about it? And it happens very simply. I was asked to come to 2 different places, one Abbey Road. In 2018, at this point, I don't remember who I was working for, but Microsoft, I think. And I was asked to go to Abbey Road, the Abbey Road, right? The walking across, that one, the mecca of amazing music. And I was asked to go there, and for the first time ever, they let technologists and musicians be on, that's Studio One. Anyway, if you're into music, that's a thing. And so we're in Studio One building a hackathon. I'm not gonna go through all the details, but the winner of this hackathon, the winner was a rap battle bot. A bot that leveraged natural language, an API. It was built by a dev, not a data scientist, not an AI expert, who took a natural language bot and combined it with an algorithm that controlled cadence so that you could rap to this device, and it would automatically cadence and contextually rap back to you. And it was pretty cool. But here's what ended up happening. Prior to that, the musicians, producers, and DJs in the room did not really think tech could help. They were meh. Not their tech, right? Not the cool thing with all the buttons on it there is music tech. This is enterprise AI we were talking about. How can enterprise AI help a producer? And we showed them the value. There was 37 teams and incredible work that was done. There was this really cool thing called Chirp. I don't know if you know it, but it gives off this R2-D2 sound and can trigger web browsers. It was amazing. Anyway, you could go look it up on YouTube. But it just showed the value of putting people with the problem, music producers and DJs had music issues, next to technology in a way that hadn't been done before. Next, enter the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Same thing, curators. It was like an awkward high school dance, right? Where I walk in and I'm like the mediator, and the data scientists are on one side from MIT, the curators from the Met are on the other side, and they're both pretty much sure they don't like each other, pretty much. Now, at the end of it, we ended up building a skill that became extremely popular. It was called Art Today, or Today's Art, and I gave it to my son who has Down syndrome, and he used it. He was able to navigate through 6 pieces of art, which I guarantee you, if I went to a museum, he would not get that far. He just doesn't have the patience to do it. But he was able to ask questions. Show me more. Show me this artist. Oh, I want to see more with flowers. Oh, he was able to use his voice to see things he never would have seen in real life, and to see art. And the main reason that was possible is not just because of voice technology, though that was a big part, but also because the Metropolitan Museum of Art was nice enough to open source 200,000 or 400,000 photos. Huge part. I mean, it's an ecosystem that makes this technology come to life. And it's not just for us, the 1% of the 1%. It's for people in schools. It's for people in nursing homes. And it can change the quality of their life in ways that I've seen personally. But it's something that, again, it drives me to take every role that I've had. Of course, I did get on NBC Nightly News for exactly that. Like, NBC Nightly News, I don't know, maybe I'm old, but I was like, that's TV. Back in the day when it was cool to be on TV. I don't have a YouTube channel, but I got NBC. But this became my mission, right? It became something that I started to see. But here's again, a slightly sad part of this story. I had the luxury of being chosen to be one of the judges at the Alexa Prize competition. Anyone familiar with the Alexa Prize? Hopefully none of you are in it, because I'm about to say some stuff. But Alexa Prize, they basically have a bunch of universities compete to build a social bot. This year they're going to do a task bot, should be interesting. But the social bot is like, let's create a social experience. And my job was to communicate with these bots for 20 minutes and then judge them at the end. And I've done it 4 years running, because I was too close to the tech before that. And here's this sad thing. In 4 years, the experiences, would you say they were more elaborate, less elaborate, or exactly the same? They were kind of exactly the same. It's almost similar to what we see when we go to Alexa, right? Today, I could do pretty much the same kind of stuff as I could do on Alexa 5 years ago. The difference, though, is that we've got huge collections of AI models now at our disposal. Like, I went into the partner hall, so many opportunities. I was like, why don't I get that in every brand that I talk to on Alexa, right? There's a gap. And what I've uncovered through my hackathons is that gap is often in the ingenuity of the developer, right? In the ingenuity of those who are putting their fingers on a keyboard and building the solutions. And many times, people will build it, and the people and their either management or circle of friends or even VC partners will be like, yeah, that's not going to work. And I've heard that before. And the sad thing, though, is no one's there to say, actually, no, keep going. Build that thing nobody thinks is going to work, because it's going to change how we build this technology forever. So the kitchen is where we started, but the classroom, the nursing home, the hospital, patient care is being revolutionized by our friends at Red Fox AI, right? They are doing some incredible work with voice technology, including Alexa, but also including Google Assistant and embedding their own virtual assistant to allow patient care at home to be different. And it came because the person who built it is not a technologist. He's a childhood cancer survivor who was like, it was horrible. What would I do to have reminders? What would I do to have something that would tell my parents how to give me a shot? Little things. I was like, that's why we have to diversify who's on these teams. Because it's people with those experiences that drive evolution in the technology. It's people like me who have a kid with Down syndrome or a dad with cognitive issues that drive evolution. And so if you're not one of those people, let's attract those people. because that's how we'll get past this like plateau of functionality in these products. Finally, I want to just talk a little bit about my journey in the last 2 years, as it's taken a bit of a turn. One, I work with organizations that both are building machine learning models from scratch. There are still some out there that do that. And those that don't want to do that, which is, I'd say, like a 90-10 percentage, right? 10% of organizations are building from scratch. 90% are like, we're not going to be able to hire people to do that work nor maintain that work. We need to leverage. It's called applied AI. And one of the things I wanted to mention to you all was a couple years ago, maybe, I don't know, is Otto here? Did he end up making it? I haven't seen him. Hi, Otto. So Otto is from this little known, maybe bigger, Speechly company. And I uncovered them because I was looking for ways to implement voice. Remember Jeff Bezos in my head? Voice everywhere. Not just on a device where I invested hundreds of hours building skills for Alexa. I was like, this doesn't seem right that only people with this black cylinder can use this. There are billions of websites and more than that in mobile apps. How do we get voice in there? But that's not for me to solve. So when I uncovered Speechly, I was like, all right, this is pretty cool, right? And you could do it right in the browser, which I'm also a huge fan of. So if any of you are into building software for the masses, like let people test it in the browser because it makes me want to buy it. I just do that. But it's a huge opportunity today because anybody, my dad right now is a buyer. He has money, he's older, but he can't use a phone or a web page. And there's more and more of them every second. The baby boomers are aging, and they have, most of them, some money. And so if you want to attach yourself to that community, to that demographic, and I encourage you to do so because they are living longer than any generation before them, you're going to have to show up where they are. And where they are is not going to be on a small mobile device. It's not going to be on a big computer. It's going to be through voice. And today, more than ever, I mean, every single Christmas, Alexa breaks records in number of devices sold. And you know why? Because there's a huge demographic of population that need them. So I'm a huge fan. Otto will meet now. I wanted to also say his name out loud so I would affirm connecting with him in person. But I love the idea of, like, if you're building any interaction, add voice to it. It's actually not hard now. It's relatively easy. If you're a web dev, it's easy. And it's just not fair to the rest of the world who doesn't get to play with your brand or use your brand's technology or buy your brand's t-shirts because you didn't think 3 to 10 lines of code would be worth it. It's definitely worth it today. Now, I've also gotten very interested in the metaverse. I have an organization that creates mini summits for big summits. Maybe next year we'll do one with voice. But I build mini summits in the metaverse. And there's a beauty to that. I didn't realize it because I have a big accessibility community until later. But coming to an event like this, like, look around, there aren't a huge amount of people with significant physical disabilities. And that's not like the truth. There are many people in the voice community, like there's a percentage of people, I'll say, there's not enough, that have disabilities that would not come to an event. That I've interviewed thousands of people at Amazon, at Microsoft. I've never interviewed anyone in a wheelchair, ever. How is that possible when they represent a pretty distinct population in our world? It's the same as maybe African Americans getting these jobs in the 60s. Maybe it's the same as Latinas getting into executive ranks. But it's a pain that I don't want. So I got inspired with the metaverse because one of my friends who has cerebral palsy said to me, oh my gosh, I could go to that conference. I could sit in a chair. I could ask a question. I could raise my hand. I could do things that I could not do in real life. And I was like, done. And I ended up, like, that week, I think I closed 6 summits where I built a virtual environment. And you wouldn't know, right? Your physical ability becomes irrelevant in a virtual space. You get to be a robot, a unicorn, or you get to make yourself. Now, granted, if anyone's in fashion, the Oculus fashion is atrocious. But, like, I look like a grandma. Like, it's terrible. I love grandmas, but I'm not ready for that. So yeah, like hoodies, how hard is it to make a hoodie? Anyway, it's the metaverse. The nice thing about it, especially again for, of course, accessibility, but it creates a new space, and that space integrates voice beautifully. I remember the day that Oculus, don't judge me, join me, Oculus added a voice API, and I was also there when HoloLens added the voice API. Very similar, yet drastically different experiences. But on the Oculus, I got the ability instantly, it's push to talk, which by the way, Amazon Alexa started very similarly. It's push to talk, but now I never have to like I never have to do that again, right? I could just ask for what I want. Terrible, terrifying, funny story. On Halloween, or Halloween week, was doing something and I wanted to get to Horizon Workrooms. So I used my little double click and said, open Horizon Workrooms. Well, it heard Horizon and opened up the Event Horizon Horror Show and terrified me for weeks. I mean, VR horror, if you're into that stuff, you might love it, but it was not awesome. So we still have to work on accuracy, but it's there. And like I said, I actually think a lot of technology starts with an accessibility view or an accessibility lens. But it makes my life easier in that environment, right? I can say from my desk in the metaverse, I can be like, open up this video, save this file, open up the whiteboard, turn into presentation mode, and I could just turn around and my whiteboard's right there. It's really, really cool. But it's the future. And I will tell you, when I first started talking about Alexa, they told me, that's cool, but how long is that gonna last? And here we are, 7 years later, and the devices keep selling, right? I have a microwave that is voice activated in my house. It's weird not to smell the burning popcorn smell. Like, it's weird. Like, you'd think you wouldn't miss it, but, but it's awesome. Because now anyone in my house, I have teens to tots, right? 4-year-old all the way to a 16-year-old. Anyone can make these things. And so I just want to encourage you, as I kind of, wrap up, it's really, our next 7 years can be different than the first 7. There was some dramatic stuff that we did, and we're starting to see the metaverse. But I honestly do believe that someone, like either in this room or potentially someone you know, but they won't be someone that looks like everyone else, right? The people that change this technology will be people that are close to the problem. They will be people that are empathetic to world, challenges, to socioeconomic issues, and they'll be supported, or at least I hope they will. I certainly love this community that we've built. I'm super grateful to Pete for letting me take the stage. I hope you found some fun and enjoyment in my talk, and I really hope that you'll connect with me. That's it. Thank you.